The Catholic Morning Show.
I want to invite you to a special event coming up this Saturday, June 13th, at the Des Moines Police Department, 25 East 1st Street here in Des Moines. Gather at the west side of the building near the memorial. You're welcome to bring a lawn chair if you need it, and the event is going to be a rosary and litany of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, hosted by the Catholic Des Moines police officers. For the citizens of Des Moines and metro area, state of Iowa and city leaders, police officers, firefighters, EMS, and medical personnel, along with Des Moines clergy, will be gathering at 1:30 p.m. That is a rosary and litany to the Sacred Heart at the Des Moines Police Department. All are welcomed to attend. Again, that's this Saturday, June 13th at 1:30 at the Des Moines Police Department. If you have an event in your parish or your community you would like us to promote, we'll do the best we can. So you can go to iowacatholicradio.com and we go to our events page where you can submit all the details, and we'll, if able to, we'll share it with our listeners so people can be connected to Christ in many ways in our community and throughout our state. Want to welcome into, I know he's going to be a great guest because I know two Jebs in my life. Well, I know one, and now I'm going to meet a second. And the first one is awesome. So I think the second one is going to be just as interesting as we talk about this book, Missing Monarchy, Correcting Misconceptions about the Middle Ages and Medieval Kingship, Democracy, and Liberty. Good morning, Jeb.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on. And it's rare indeed to run into someone else that's had my name, because I've been looking for a long time. I had a class in college where I had to research famous people with my name, and I looked up Jeb Stewart, Jeb Bush. I forget who the other one, but no one was actually named Jeb. They were all abbreviations for some longer names. So.
You know, I forgot Jeb Bush, so I'm gonna reserve judgment here on on our radio show here on any of my opinions there. But anyhow, that all aside, you know, as I was looking at some of the other books you've written, I would say you have a knack for creating maybe what I want to say tantalizing titles to the books, and as a historian, I think that's very clever and wise. Maybe give our, you know, to launch us into our conversation, our listeners, just a little bit about your background and interest in history and writing about it.
Yeah, so I've lived in Vermont and New England my entire life. I've always had an interest in history, going back to, you know, grade school. I remember the only class that interested me ever was history class, in especially the Middle Ages. I love the Crusades and the American Civil War as well. And as you know, those are the two subjects that I've written books on. And so I've just always been fascinated with history, with learning about how we did things in the past. In a way, I've always felt a little out of place, I guess, in the modern world, where I'd prefer to live at these different ages, and that's part of what drives my interest in research as well.
Well, on this particular title, as I kind of talked about at the outset, I think it's a very provocative title in some ways. We've seen these No Kings protests, you know, and a real recognition of like what is really going on in our government, you know, not only locally but globally. So talk about the sort of your launch point or your inspiration for this particular title, and then we're going to get into the meat of the book and some of your thoughts.
Yeah, Missing Monarchy really has dual meanings. One is that we're missing monarchy as a political system, especially in the Middle Ages, is what I'm looking at. And also missing monarchy as a form of government. We think of democracy, we equate it with freedom and self-government and liberty, but really it's produced the opposite. You look at long-term democracy, over time it always ends up in a more authoritarian form of oligarchy, where you have political powers and you have these interest groups that are really kind of controlling everyone, and self-government is taken away from the people, from the voters at the local level, and it's moved to a national level, and now everything is controlled nationally. And I just believe over time it turns into an authoritarian form of governance, whereas you look back in the Middle Ages and it preserved liberty for centuries, and compared to today, the government was minuscule in what it controlled and what it was involved in. And so the main thing is in my book is I'm arguing democracy is not freedom. It always leads to some form of authoritarian government. And that America, you can you compare us to the Middle Ages, and we are not free at all. We do not have self-government. Voting did not provide self-government. And the Middle Ages actually achieved self-government for a large percent of the population without having to vote. And, you know, the way we're taught today about governance, we don't understand how that's possible. But I delve into that into my book.
Well, so for somebody like me who's not a well-read historian, when we're talking about the Middle Ages, give me sort of the time period that you're exploring here on the topic of monarchies.
Right, yeah, thank you. Because that is the clarification I go through in my book. I argue to redefine the Middle Ages. I think historians have somewhat misidentified a period here. So what most historians refer to as the early and the high Middle Ages, from roughly 400 or 500 AD to 1300 AD, is what I see as the actual Middle Ages. And the 14th century is the most transformative, in my mind, in modern Western history, and that's where we go into this pre-modern system, and that's where monarchs come about. So before, we had tribal kings, and they were servants of the law. They were servants of the people. Kings could not create law. They were very weak, as I said, very libertarian. And then after the 14th century, we get the return of Roman law, and now kings become monarchs. They become above their people. They become rulers. They can legislate law. They can, create law. They become more powerful, centralized, or power becomes centralized, and everything begins to change. In England, it actually occurred before with William the Conqueror in 1066. So I'm looking at Anglo-Saxon England, in Europe, feudal Europe as a whole, before that 14th century. After that, we run into true monarchs, which is a worse system than kingship for sure. I think it has advantages over modern systems. But yeah, I'm looking at a unique form of kingship that existed in the early and high Middle Ages from around 600 to 1300 AD.
Now, I think there's certainly probably somebody right now, and you touched upon it in your earlier comment, that people don't necessarily associate monarchies with freedom. So, what during this time period, what things did you discover or learn about that spoke to opportunities where people actually lived more free and self-governance was more of an opportunity?
Right, yeah. So one thing is their view of law. There's Christendom. It's a very Catholic view, and they're looking to the past. They're looking, whether it's theology or politics, they're looking to the past for perfection. They view laws deriving from God. Like the Ten Commandments. It's written in stone. It does not change. God created these laws for people throughout all time. To think of a king or a majority to be able to transform the law, to add to their power, to add to the governmental power, is really to put man on God's throne, to say man is the lawgiver, not God, which is not their perspective. And that, as I said, you can go through centuries without legislation at all being passed. The government does not. In America, we pass 10,000 laws a year. And that's more than you'll find throughout the whole Middle Ages. And it's like these tentacles that go into all these areas of life, and the government expands and expands because we have a progressive humanistic mindset that man can create law, that man can tell another man what to do. Whereas in their perspective, God created these laws. He ingrained them in nature, and you have them centuries past. The current rulers do not create this law. They're merely protectors of the law. And if someone goes against the law, they're really going against God. So if a king tries to expand his power, or raise his taxes, or his authority, or lord, or whatever, it's everyone's obligation, from the church, the peasant, the lord, and the king, to resist that person who's now put himself in place of God. And they have a rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God mindset, that this man is now not only attacking your liberties, but he's now at war with God, saying that he knows better than God and that he's going to expand his powers. So you don't have the expansion of power, and that's what keeps it libertarian throughout all these centuries. The way they achieve self-government, this is what I love, because the founders really implemented this, but they had decentralization. They had it to an extreme extent. So one town next to the other town could have very different laws and customs. So today it'd be like one town being libertarian, the next one being Democrat, the next being Republican. And people would move and live to these united wholes, as Thomas Aquinas described them. And they're like-minded people with the same politics, the same religion, the same culture. They don't have to fight, and they don't have to worry about who's coming into power because the law is already set. And so if you're a libertarian, you move to this town. If you're a Marxist, you move to this town, and so on. And that way, everyone could achieve self-governance, and they didn't have the democratic mindset of might makes right or majority rules and the centralized power enforced one way on everyone. We did that in the 14th century, really, is when it started. And that's when you set all these groups at war with each other. No one actually achieved self-governance, and it's just a terrible system. And that's how they achieved self-governance without voting, is through decentralization.
We got just a couple more minutes with Jeb Smith, author of the book Missing Monarchy, Correcting Misconceptions About the Middle Ages, Medieval Kingship, Democracy, and Liberty. And, I want to get your hot take on this. What is is there hope for the democracy of our nation? And again, kind of looking at the global situation, how do we maintain this autonomy or this self-governance and continue to put some limits on the encroachment of government in our lives?
I think in the system we have, first off, we were not created as a democracy. All the founding fathers despised democracy. We're a constitutional republic, and you won't find them saying anything nice about centralized power or democracy. So what I think in the United States, what we need to do is go back to how it was at the founders, maybe even the Articles of Confederation, because working within the current system, we're playing their game. The interest groups, the powerful, the centralized power are going to win over time, and we can see that throughout the decades. It's just getting worse and worse. So what we need to do, in my opinion, is go back to decentralization. The states won't do it anymore. I published an article in the Abbeville Institute. The state of Texas has a population that the whole United States had at the Civil War. And if we told people in 1860 that we're going to put you all under one state government, they'd probably put me in an insane asylum. But that's what we're doing in the state of Texas alone. I would love to see power return to the counties. Almost abolish the states, give all the power that the states have, and give that to the counties. So now you have local control, local governance, and then slowly take from the federal and give that back to the counties as well. And we can kind of return to that decentralized form of governance without having to fight each other, without having to outvote them and get angry at each other. All the hatred that comes with politics would dissipate and self-governance would return. So within our current system, I don't see how it could work. We really need to deconstruct the thing, return it to local control.
Jeb Smith, Missing Monarchy is the book. Where can people find it? I have many more questions, but I'm going to have to dig into the book to get your thoughts on it and to learn more. But where else can our listeners find the book?
Sensus Fidelium Press has Missing Monarchy, Defending the Middle Ages, and they're also both available on Amazon.com. And I have my author's website is authorjebsmith.com for my other books, articles, images, and so on.
I think if you're somebody who enjoys looking back to know how we can look forward, I think this is not only this book but the other titles that Jeb has authored would be well worth your time. Jeb, thanks for making time for us here on the Catholic Morning Show.
Thank you for having me on.
Listen to the Catholic Morning Show weekdays at 7 a.m. Central on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network, iowacatholicradio.com, or the Iowa Catholic Radio app.